It's 8 in the evening. You know what time it is, everybody. It's Jared A. Chambers here, your host with Command Briefing, Thursday, August the 3rd. Arraignment Day, and Mr. Trump returns to Washington, D.C. All right, everybody, thank you for joining me this evening. Your host, Jared A. Chambers, with your Thursday Command Briefing. And today was a big news day. Today was, of course, Arraignment Day. President Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, returns to Washington, D.C., this time as an indicted person to come to court to hear the charges read against him by the judge, an Obama judge, in court, in a D.C. court, with all of the other D.C. court judges lining up the back row. I mean, several, folks on Twitter who are well-versed in legal affairs just noted, I mean, it's not that they can't do this. Boy, what a bad look, though. You know, if you're trying to even have the appearance of fairness, why would you do this? Why would you make it look like a stacked deck in the courtroom against President Trump? And I think that really tells a lot of the story today. I mean, it hit me this afternoon after Trump had departed the courtroom. I mean, the arraignment wasn't until 4 p.m., so we're talking about, pretty late in the day events. And we're doing this, 8 Eastern time. I think everyone left the court around 5. So about 3 hours to kind of digest this coming out of the court. And I noticed it's not the Trump supporters who seem glum anymore. I mean, I think maybe this morning where there's this sense of, what is this Obama judge going to do? Are they going to push for something crazy like pretrial detention? I think just the unknown brings a little bit of trepidation to folks, and understandably so. But the mood had just really shifted by this evening. I think a colossal energy shift that's going to be noted down the road when people go back and talk about everything that happened with President Trump. I mean, from a historical perspective, I think August 3rd will be a day that is remembered in history, not just for the significance of him returning to D.C. for a federal indictment, but really marking the comeback. Is appropriate to come to Washington, D.C. for this, because this, I think, is the turning point. America is not like many of you listening to this broadcast. It's not like me doing this broadcast. It doesn't necessarily hang on every piece of news that comes out of politics or even just news in general. But I think that people have still a pretty innate sense of fairness. It can be misguided at times and sometimes used against them, and maybe brings with it a little bit of naivete. But there's still this innate sense of fairness there. When people see someone getting dogpiled, the instinct is, hey, wait a minute, that's not right. What's happening here? And when you have a president brought to Washington to a courtroom in a week that we've also been talking about the many scandals of the Biden cartel that now is installed in the White House, I think inadvertently, I think that they're waking people up. And I think that that's responsible for the energy shift. And really, folks, it's not just me noticing that. I was taking notes of, some of the things that I was seeing, commentary on Twitter this afternoon. Mr. Meghan McCain, who you probably know him. He still writes under his bachelor name for his professional capacity. But Mr. Meghan McCain, also known as Ben Domenech, said, "Today was the first day in a year that I think Trump could win." Yeah, this is no longer something that you can just write off as the hope against hope of Trump supporters. Other people are noticing the energy shift. Let's see, Alex Berenson, liberal, former New York Times guy. A real Donald Trump is about the least martyrable person in the world. And somehow Jack Smith has managed to do it. And I mean, he's right. I mean, look at it. I mean, Trump evokes strong emotions in people. And there will be debates about this for a long time, about whether Trump is popular or unpopular. It misses the point. Trump is very popular with the people that he's popular with, and he's very unpopular with the people that he's unpopular with, which gives everybody this kind of bubble sense. Well, everybody I talk to loves him, or everybody I talk to is tired of the guy and hates him. And so it's easy to fool yourself at times. I think leading into the 2020 election, which again, I believe was stolen. I believe that it's a clear case, but it was close because I think sometimes we can get in our own bubble, and we didn't see how motivated the people that he is unpopular with, how motivated they were to act out. And so you always have these competing strains of energy anywhere Donald Trump is involved. But today the energy goes back to the people who support him, because he's going to add to those ranks people who may not have had as strong of an opinion before, but conflicts like this have a way of focusing things, and they have a way of setting lines of demarcation where people are going to say, this is basically unfair, and this is basically un-American. What is happening here to the figurehead of dissent against the Biden administration, to the most probable opponent of the Biden administration? And this is just something that we didn't grow up with this. This isn't a part of the America that I knew. And how do I do something to register my opinion about all of this? Because none of us are going to be on that D.C. jury. None of us are going to be on the New York jury, the Alvin Bragg stuff. We're not going to be on the Fulton County jury when that comes out, looking like next week. When that indictment comes out, you're not going to be sitting in the Florida courtroom where that indictment is. How do you reach out and say, hey, this isn't right, this isn't fair? Well, there's only one way to do it, and that is to support President Trump in his current ambitions to retake office. Number one, it sends a message that you won't pick our candidates for us. We will choose. We're able to handle that. But also, too, really the only person that can secure Donald Trump's freedom at this point is Donald Trump himself. I know a lot of people have looked at how flimsy all of this stuff is, and there's this expectation that at the end of the day that the Supreme Court will step in and do something at some point. I am far from convinced of anything like that happening. Number one, we have some very lily-livered sort of conservative justices on the Supreme Court. But also there's, ever since, you look at the election itself, you look at some of the big cases to come before them across time. Number one, they're not real big on standing up against the bureaucracy because they come from bureaucracy. They're okay with it. Even the conservative ones have a general sense that the right place of order in America is with power entrusted in the elite because they consider themselves a part of it. But also, too, I don't think that they want to open themselves to that avenue of attack. And we talked about this earlier in the week. It's no coincidence this ramped up intimidation against the Supreme Court. It's not all about the social cases. It's not all about the abortion cases. They're sending a signal to the Supreme Court of the United States that, hey, we can come in and we can change laws to stack the Supreme Court. It is a message: do not interfere with the bureaucratic state. Just like they have done with Trump and Trump supporters. They are flexing their muscle. They are letting them know, hey, if you go against us, there can be consequences for it. But all right, folks, we're going to have more. I'm going to play a few sound clips of things coming out of the day. Some pretty cool stuff that I think you want to hear. And we're going to talk about some more of all of this when we get back. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. For those who are listening live, just stand by and we'll be right back. Okay, folks, we're back. Thank you for standing by during the break. And let's get back to it. So I thought it was pretty cool. Sometimes I think that, I just feel like Trump and his team have some kind of burner account out there that follows me, because sometimes I will hear something that I have said that's kind of specific, and I'll hear it repeated in kind of a cool sort of sense through his press team or somebody that is a surrogate for Trump, or statements from Trump himself. And we've talked about, one of the things that I focus on, because it's my background, is sales and marketing, how so much of sales and marketing theory applies to politics, because you are trying to convince people of certain things. It's an art of persuasion, and it's knowing your audience, and it's providing solutions that are specific to that audience. And so when I hear other people kind of put it in those same sales and marketing terms, it piques my interest. And this came out of a Trump statement today, talking about the DeSantis candidacy. And this is something that I've talked about. And here's a quote from it. There is also no, quote, value proposition, quote, unquote, to a DeSantis candidacy. And value proposition, the reason it's in quotes, I mean, that's a very specific marketing way of looking at things. The quote continues, New Coke fell flat after much fanfare, and studies showed that the more people consumed it, the more they disliked it. Does that sound familiar? And boy, it really sounded familiar to me, because we talked about that last night and the product marketing standpoint of this. And where I said, the problem is, and this is a marketing trope too, the dog doesn't eat the dog food. Meaning at a certain point, you can wrap all of the marketing around it that you want to. You can, have great advertisements. You can have pretty words. You can do all of the right things. But if it's just a crap product, no one's going to buy it. And so Trump is really reiterating exactly what we talked about on the command briefing last night, and what I spent a lot of time on my Twitter account at C4CEO talking about, looking at these political things in sales and marketing terms. And one of the things that I thought was cool, and this is an upgrade for Trump, by the way. This is something that, even though Trump has a great marketing background, he hasn't always been surrounded by people in his political life that share those instincts. And so when he has relied on more traditional political types, that's when, people like me have gotten frustrated. Like, hey, there was an opportunity and you missed it. Why did you do that? And today, he was prepped for it. His team was prepped for it. They had message on point. And the message, I mean, it's clear, is just setting out this timeline of how every revelation from the Biden cartel scandal has immediately been followed by an action against Trump. In April, it was the House hearing testimony of Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents. And then that's when Alvin Bragg in New York indicted Donald Trump. In June, it was the FBI releasing documents alleging a $10 million bribe from Burisma. And that's when you had the first Jack Smith indictment in Florida. July, Hunter Biden rejects plea deal after DOJ blanket immunity. Immediately, activist prosecutor Jack Smith adds more charges for Trump in Florida. Again, I mean, there was hardly any time passed on that one. You'll remember that. That was just, a week or so ago, going on 2 weeks now. And that one, it was so transparent, the timing of it, because they had just been in court. And Jack Smith assuring Judge Cannon that they were ready to go to trial in December. Well, he knew that was a lie. Jack Smith knew that was a lie, because he had this superseding indictment in Florida regarding the documents ready to go. There's no way he could have gone to trial. Which, By the way, I have to point out the irony of that too. Jack Smith, as a prosecutor, told Judge Cannon that he was ready to go to trial in December, knowing full well the whole time that he had this superseding indictment in play. And that superseding indictment with discovery and everything related to that would push out any potential trial. But yet he went before Judge Cannon anyway to assure the court that he was ready to move forward. So Jack Smith knew he was lying. He was working with the special counsel's office and the Department of Justice. They all knew it was a lie. They were working in conjunction on this. And he lied to the court in pursuit of a legal strategy that he thought would behoove him in his case. What does that sound like? It sounds exactly like what he has charged Donald Trump with in a D.C. courtroom just this week. Again, you never get anywhere arguing hypocrisy with these people. They really do think that it's different when they do it. But again, if you want to understand why America is going to start to see this as just a grotesque dogpiling, when people start to pay attention, they notice the difference. And they've been so rabid about pursuing this, and they're having to drive things into the news cycle so quickly to counter things about Hunter and Joe Biden that now they're forcing people to notice. People can't just, tune out the news anymore. This is big stuff. These are the biggest stories of our lifetimes. And we've lived in a lifetime of crazy news stories, one after the other. In my almost 46 years, I have lived that Chinese proverb, I think it is, of being damned with having an interesting life. Seeing 9/11, seeing the Great Recession, seeing wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the longest periods of war in America's history that we didn't even clearly win. Seeing someone like Trump elected in the first place. Pretty much all of the impeachments to ever happen in the history of the United States have happened in my lifetime now. They don't give people a chance to ever just take a breath from any of this because it's always escalating. And just when people think, maybe they are tired of just all the so-called drama of all of this, and it doesn't matter who started it and who's guilty and whatnot. We just want to go back to some sense of normal. And maybe that sentiment would normally work against President Trump. I don't know. A lot of people think so. But they never give a chance for anyone to find out, because they ramp up the drama, and it's clear that Trump in this case is the victim of it. It's clear to any fair-minded person. And again, I think that most of America is fair-minded about this stuff. They can see when you have a politician, whether you like him or not, whether you agree with him or not, he didn't get rich from being in office. Joe Biden did. Donald Trump's kids didn't get a sweetheart deal for some kind of a job based on Trump having been president. They already had good jobs. Where did Trump advantage himself in any of his political activities? Again, whether you agree with him or not, whether you like the policy or not, where can you argue that it was done for the benefit of self in the way that Biden has. And so I think people can see that difference. And when someone is facing the rest of their life behind bars and enough potential jail time to cross many lifetimes, and I mean, Trump is at this point, I'm sure if you counted up the different counts, is facing more jail time in years than the United States has existed, probably by a factor of at least 2. You know, we're coming up on, or we just passed, 247 years old. Yeah, he probably has upwards of 500 years of prison time in front of him. I think that's going to seem a little excessive to people. And so the energy shift goes back to him. So, again, and I want to play some clips here because I think it was really cool, just the preparation and being on message to take advantage of all of that and show the contrast to people. This is going to be one of his lawyers, Alina Habba, and she is speaking outside of the court. Let me just play you a little clip of this.
On March 17th, Hunter accidentally admits that it was his laptop from hell. The next day, DA Alvin Bragg indicts President Trump. June 8th, an FBI document is released showing that the Ukrainians paid the Biden crime family millions and millions of dollars. The next day, the Mar-a-Lago raid and the Mar-a-Lago indictment. Last week, Hunter Biden's sweetheart plea deal fell through when the judge realized it had blanket immunity. The following day, a superseding indictment against Donald Trump. July 31st, Devin Archer goes to testify in front of the House. That was only after they failed to put him in jail prior to the fact. What happens the next day? The January 6th indictment that we're here for today. This is not a coincidence. This is election interference at its finest against the leading candidate right now for president, for either party.
Folks, that is how you do messaging. They understand that America is going to look at this and see a unfair dogpiling of Trump, and they came prepared with notes, with timeline, to show how at every stage of this, the Biden administration, in conjunction, has been ready to go against Trump. Not just to knock him out of the race, not just election interference, to take him out, but because it is Trump that has stepped on all of their crimes and caused them to be uncovered. Going back to the first impeachment, the perfect phone call. I mean, it is Trump who caused daylight to be brought upon all of these things. And so they have to go after Trump to kick that back under the rug and keep him out of the race. That's how you do messaging. And I was just really impressed with that. And to take that point a little bit further, I don't know a ton about Trump's lawyers in this case. She seems exceptionally bright. This is a much better reboot of Jenna Turncoat Ellis. He I think at least has some better help than that, although I hate to damn this poor lady with faint praise. But hey, I mean, time will tell how good their legal chops are, but you have to give them kudos for one thing. They're out there defending a man against an indictment where his past attorneys are named as co-conspirators. The Department of Justice leaves no stone unturned in going against Trump, because part of the message, too, is to warn people off to stay out of our sandbox, to stay away. And I hope that Trump has good representation, but my fear has always been that he will not get the best of representation because a lot of good lawyers, understandably, won't want to undergo the scrutiny, the legal finger probe, anal probe that they're going to get by being Trump's lawyer, the potential charges, the threats, the loss of other business. So you have to give these lawyers working with Trump right now just a ton of credit for that. It would have been easy, I'm sure, in their careers to not be a part of this. They're taking a big gamble. I have to appreciate them on that front. And with that, I'm going to take a brief time out, and we'll be back. All right, folks, thanks for standing by. We're back. And yeah, wow, so much today. And again, yeah, I'll just say that one more time, how impressed I am with this legal team just being in the fight. They had every reason to not be, and so I have to appreciate them for that. Let's go through. Again, I'm just taking note of some things that I want to share with you that came out of this. Next clip here. Let's listen to Donald Trump himself give a brief statement here and apologize. Yeah. Oh, hold on. Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of airplane noise. He's on the tarmac here, so we'll get this as clean as possible, but here we go.
Well, thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and Thank you very much. This is a very sad day for America, and it was also very sad driving through Washington, D.C. and seeing the filth and the decay and all of the broken buildings and walls and the graffiti. This is not the place that I left. It's a very sad thing to see it. When you look at what's happening, this is a persecution of a political opponent. This was never supposed to happen in America. This is the persecution of the person that's leading by very, very substantial numbers in the Republican primary and leading Biden by a lot. So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him. We can't let this happen in America. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so I thought that was a very powerful statement there, and I'm sure he'll have more to say in one of his normal releases that he does. For an impromptu on the tarmac and coming out of the courtroom, I thought it was really good. Here's what stood out to me, too. Again, he used this for an opportunity. Listen how he contrasted what D.C. is versus what he left behind, talking about the graffiti and everything like that. I mean, he's painting a picture, and when you're painting a picture for an audience, you want it to be relatable, and you want it to tap into pain and experiences that they're already feeling. And in some way, you're tapping into that to create a sense of, hey, I get it, and establish some credibility there for communicating with that person. And look, we have this inflation going on. We've seen the rampant crime problems of the last few years. Few people are going to argue how great things are under the Biden administration. Some people will spin it or are willing to tolerate it because it furthers their long-term political goals. But again, for all of the press statements that they can give and all of the spin that they've done, inflation's really hurting a lot of people out there. The economy is really hurting a lot of people out there. And it's one thing to suffer when you know that you're in some kind of communal suffering. You know, that's one of the things that the government was able to do successfully during COVID, and I absolutely hated it because I was against the government's efforts there, and I was against the overreach. But one of the things that they were very successful in doing from a messaging and marketing standpoint is this whole we're in this together kind of thing. So people wore their suffering as some kind of badge of honor. Like, hey, we're going to get through this. And that's happened at other points. I mean, I still remember post 9/11, a lot of that was out there. Yeah, we're going to win. We're in this together. A sense of solidarity. But that solidarity goes out the window really quick when you see a crack-headed son of a president getting paid millions and millions of dollars as some kind of so-called energy expert, really just to sell access to his father as vice president, selling paintings, again, some kind of crackhead selling paintings, again, nothing more than a way to launder money from the criminal enterprise that the family was running. And so while you're out here really struggling with prices at the grocery store, prices at the pump, and with all of this craziness going on, by the way, I don't know what it's like where you live. Gas prices have jumped like 30, 40 cents where I live in like the last month, 6 weeks. And nobody's given a reason for it. Nobody's really talking about it because all of the air is getting sucked out of the news cycle. But people are still very much hurting. And there's no sense of a window at the end of the tunnel, you know, some kind of light that we're seeing that lets us know, hey, this sucks right now, but it's going to get better. That's not there. And there's no sense of we're doing this for some kind of greater purpose. And there's certainly not any kind of sense that we're all in it together when you have politicians who are getting very wealthy from all of this. So as time goes on, too, you know, what the Biden administration has tried to disingenuously do is compare itself to 2020. And I've said before, I think that to some degree we all try to shut parts of 2020 out of our minds about how much it sucked and how much life was just miserable during that period of time. But at least on a cognitive level, we do remember, hey, that was a special situation. Businesses were shut down. People couldn't go to work. So when you compare the economy and jobs numbers to what they looked like 3 years ago, well, people know that you're full of it. I mean, That's just not a valid comparison to anybody. I mean, okay, they may put out of their minds how much it really sucked, but they know, okay, that wasn't the life that I remember. The life that I remember and kind of where I would like to be again is before all of that craziness. And that goes whether you blame Trump for the government overreach, whether you blame Democrat governors and Anthony Fauci for it. Most people, at least, their sense of normal goes back to a pre-COVID time. And so if you force people by setting a contrast to really go back and look at, okay, when was your life better versus when was it worse? Suddenly, 2017, 18, and 19 don't seem that bad. Think about what 2017, 18, and 19 were like. And I know that, we still had a lot of political contentiousness during that period of time. That's part of the modern world. You're forced to care about politics now, whether you ever wanted to or not. Cable news cycle, social media, plus just the vast overreach of the federal government makes it impossible for you to just say, hey, I don't even want to think about it. You're forced to at some level. But setting aside the drama of it, you had more money available to you in 2017, 18, and 19. Now, there's going to be some exception out there say, I was doing horrible then. And on an individual level, you may find somebody who was. Not impossible, but as a whole, and I don't care what kind of job that you had or what you were doing, your expenses were more stable and they were lower, while at the same time, incomes were actually going up during that period of time on average across the board. So most people had more money. They were able to spend. They were able to save. Put a little something back. If you just looked at your day-to-day life, there were jobs starting to come back. Jobs that we haven't seen grow in a while, like in the manufacturing sector. And it's healthy for a country to have a manufacturing sector. I mean, I know that not everyone wants to work in a factory or aspires for their children to work in a factory. But the globalist ideal of we can outsource all of that and be a functioning country is a little silly, especially from people who in the same breath say, we have to defend Taiwan against China. These neocons and whatnot who talk so tough about, what we're going to do in defense of Taiwan have ignored that they have outsourced so much of our manufacturing to China. We could never assemble any real long-term war effort with what we have today. You would have to hope for some kind of miracle to take place where God gives you some kind of intervention in time to start to build a manufacturing base again. I mean, we're talking about something bigger than the scale of World War II, where you took, factories that were building things like cars and home goods and consumer items and turning them into tank, bullet, and bomb factories. At least you had the factories there to convert. We don't have that. We shuttered them. They sit empty. They're big, empty steel buildings and industrial parks that have nothing in them, that have been sold off. So if you stop and think about it, manufacturing is good and healthy for the country. We had that starting to come back in 2017, 18, and 19. If you were doing well and you decided, hey, I want to go out and buy me a new F-150 pickup truck. I want to go buy me a new GMC Sierra. I want to buy me a new Mercedes Benz. Well, you could actually, afford to do that since you had some more money coming in and prices were relatively stable. But also, if you went to the lot, there was something there for you to buy. Have you been to a car lot lately, people? I mean, they're still depressing. 3 years after COVID, and everything still gets blamed on COVID. Have you just looked at just how empty car lots are? And then what they have, the old way of buying a car, you walk up, you kind of look it over, you see the window sticker, salesman, he's marching across the parking lot, getting, a little bit of a chub as he does, thinking, hey, I got me another mark here, about to earn a commission. And then you start saying, hey, yeah, I like this, where would we be on the price? You got a window sticker there, but everyone knew sticker's not the real price. This is a game. We start at sticker and then we work our way to a price. Now, because there's nothing there, sticker is sticker. And you're negotiating to get sticker, if not a markup. You think that people don't notice that difference? Even people who have been fortunate through all of this to keep their jobs and maybe get nominal raises because they're working in an industry that's been less affected by things. Do you think that they haven't noticed that when they want to go spend some of that sweet cash, that there's really nothing cool to buy? I think they're noticing, folks. We're going to take one last quick break for this. We'll be back in just a moment. Stand by and we'll wrap up the hour here in a moment. Okay, folks, we're back. Thank you for sitting through that last break of the hour. We'll wrap this up and where things are going. But yeah, I mean, before the break, just talking about even if you've been somewhat fortunate in all of this, that you have a good job and maybe you're making decent money and you have felt some less of the pains that other people have felt. How about, let's say you bought a house during the Trump years, and I know some people like this. This would apply to them, that they bought their first house in that period of time, and their house price is now double, in some cases more than double what they paid for it 5-6 years ago, which is crazy. And, the spin on the government side would be like, hey, well, look at you there sitting pretty. You have all this equity. You have a house worth all of this money. But that's not a good thing. Look at it. If you have a home and you paid $230,000 for it in 2017, and you could put it on the market today for $460,000, and you've already been paying down across, the last 6 years too, applying payments to it. It doesn't mean that you've more than doubled your money. Or what are you going to do? Go live out of a Buick if you sell it? Folks, there's nowhere you can go in the country right now and go back and buy another $230,000 house unless you wanted to live in a shack somewhere that your job's not coming along with it. So you don't have any more purchasing power than you had before. But what do you have in the meantime? Your insurance went up. Your taxes went up. Government's acting like you got some kind of a windfall here, especially at the local level, and you didn't. So even if you did things, the right way, you're going to start feeling the pain from it. And hey, and if you're out there trying to buy your first house right now, good luck. Good luck. What can you afford? It's bad. And talking about insurance, yeah, your insurance is going up on things like your home insurance because they're insuring against a greater value. But have you looked at the insurance market lately? Have you looked at your auto insurance? Government's selling you that there's like this 8% inflation rate, which seems bad enough. My insurance has damn near went up 50% across the last year or so. If you go to the grocery store, some items, particularly things like beef, things like that, milk, and for a while the eggs were really stupid crazy. Some of those items are up, 20, 30, 40% year over year. But that doesn't get figured into inflation. Your gas prices are still nuts high. I think that people feel the difference. And so I don't go in with the assumption, and that's where all of this leads. Everyone wants to think that this is just a replay of 2020, and it's not, people. Now, I don't know what will happen. I don't have a crystal ball. I make the best predictions I can, and I think I have a pretty good track record with it. But at the end of the day, they hate Trump a lot, and people who hate Trump are very motivated, and that's something that you need to understand. Some of those people, even though they feel the pinch with the rest of us, tribal bandwagons are a real thing, folks. And if you make people feel like they're part of a movement, they will ignore a lot. Cognitive dissonance is a thing. And they will convince themselves of a lot of things that aren't true and rationalize a lot of things just in service of a narrative because it's their team's narrative. And I know that the anti-Trump people out there on the left are very motivated. And I know that they, because they are very vocal and it's a bandwagon effect, they pick up some degree of normies. They get, a certain amount of professional women telling them what a misogynist Trump is. Yeah, they sell a few people on their narrative. I'm not saying that's not so. I'm just saying that the Trump base is as motivated as I've seen it since 2016. Plus now they're selling to a new audience because all of this legal stuff is forcing people to really look at their lives, look at how things have been under the Biden administration, look at their own sense of fairness about things. We know from polling, a majority of people, and across all demographics, believe that it is likely that fraud did affect the outcome of the 2020 election. You're trying to sell those people, that majority, that Trump committed a crime by fighting against it? They're not going to buy it. You're trying to convince them that it's so important that Biden stay in charge of the government that it's worth throwing another politician, his top opponent, in jail. Why? To preserve this paradise that they're experiencing? Why would they do that? I think that the energy is there for something really big, and I felt that energy shift today. And there's so many unknowns that I'm not making any grand predictions about specific things that are going to happen. I'm just telling you that if you expect this just to be a straight up plain old replay of 2020, you're absolutely wrong about it. That is not the right playbook. Throw it away. This is going to be as game changing and groundbreaking as 2020 once was, in terms of this is uncharted. We've not been here before. You don't know what's going to happen. And I reiterate that, and that's why I'm keeping some humility and saying I don't know, because I'm damn sure tired of hearing other people say that they know. I'm tired of the Trump can't win. I'm tired of, well, he lost in 2020. We're just going losing again. If that is the depth of your analysis, you have no depth. And as I said last night before the internet took a big crap on us, I got to cut loose those boat anchors at this point. We're not having a real debate anymore. Trump is going to be the nominee. He has the majority of the party's support. That's done. You have a weaponized DOJ after him. This is political warfare through lawfare. And the only way to fight back against it is to support the candidate that they're against. So, no boat anchors, no black pills. This is new territory. 2016, they tried to cheat that one too, and we won. And that was new. I expect 2024 to be as new and groundbreaking as 2016 was and 2020 was in its own way. Whatever past playbook you're using, throw it out. The energy shift happened today. We're moving forward. Folks, thank you so much for listening. This has been Jared A. Chambers with your command briefing. No command briefing tomorrow. Going to come back next week. We'll continue to add segments to the show as we go. Hope to get a few unique guests on here as I work some things out. We'll get this flowing into a regular time slot. I've been polling folks on what they think a great time to listen is. I know a lot of you just listen to this recording when you can, and I appreciate all of you. But just know that we're going to continue to do unique things with this program and grow it. And so I hope that if you're listening, stick with us and be excited for what's coming. This is Jared A. Chambers with the Command Briefing. We'll talk to you next week. And as always, on Twitter, @C4CEO.